We know who Kevin Bacon is. He's some actor and musician. When I googled him to figure out more, all I got were articles about how apparently he was killed and eaten in December. Anyway, here's the invention of beer to Kevin Hart in 6 degrees because no one in my class knew who Kevin Bacon was. The 6 degrees of separation, if you don't know, is the theory that within 6 people you'd be able to connect with anyone in the world. Through a connection of friends and acquaintances, even you are, in theory, connected to Kevin Hart. And it's all within that 5 extra people or less. Our class is doing it differently for beer to Hart. We're using a place, a person, an event, and an object. We've randomly generated our things. I've got these specific things, and I've arranged them in such a way so I get from the invention of beer to Kevin Hart. So enjoy me sounding like a conspiracy theorist for the next few minutes as I start with beer. The invention of beer starts us from before Mesopotamia, the hunting and gathering days of humanity. In theory, some dudes left some grain in a pot and it filled with water, and by the powers of fermentation, there was beer. From there, beer started in the Middle East and spread outwards. You know who didn't have beer for quite some time? The Mongols. While invading China and its region, their only source of booze was fermented milk from various animals. They often drank arag, which is a fermented horse milk. You know how they got beer? After building roads to conquer China, they used said roads to trade. Who did they trade with? Well, they traded all the way to Britain, basically. You know what Britain had? Beer. Thus, the Mongols were introduced to beer through their conquest of China. Fun fact though, the beer Britain and the others drank back in the day isn't the same cold brew lager we have today. They boiled beer to brew it, which is why even though they use literal crap-infested waters to make it, it's perfectly fine to drink. The things we learn in history class. Next is how the Mongol conquest of China leads to London. And it leads to London because London is in France. You know who made several attempts to form an alliance with the Mongols? France. Why? Because they had the common enemy of the Islamic Caliphs. This connects really well to London because the Westminster side of London was primarily government-oriented, while the city of London proper was more trade commerce based. So it's safe to say that discussions about the Mongol alliance and the Mongols in general was not only happening all over London, but a lot of the letters attempting to, form that alliance were probably written in that same area. From London, we have to go to Abraham Lincoln. How? Well, the French made colonies. You know who also made colonies? The British. The separate colonies competed for land and resources for some time until they stopped competing and started to think about independence. You know whose independence was once a colony in which French people interacted with on the regular basis? America. You know who America had? President Abe Lincoln. So Abraham Lincoln, we know him most for the Civil War. You know how he and the Union were able to win the war so effectively? Through railroads. And what did most railroad stations have? Clocks. They had several clocks within each one to address the 4 timelines mainland America deals with and spans across. So that's how you get from Lincoln to clocks. Alright, here's the final stretch. Clocks have been developed a lot since they were first being used. Like just about everything, they get modern updates all the time. And the fun thing about modern times and all our tech is that it gets smaller and smaller. Smaller clocks eventually leads to watches, so that us busy modern folk can always be on time. And guess who loves to collect watches? Kevin Hart. And that's how I did it. From the invention of beer to Kevin Hart in 6 degrees, it can be done. Alright, that was an odd video to produce, but I hope you all enjoyed it and learned a thing or two throughout it. I did most of this 6 a.m. the day it was due, so I pray this uploads on time, and I see you all in the next video.